we're sat here via a Zoom connection with the Cypriot men's hockey captain, Tunc Ilgin.
Hiya, of course.
How you doing? Now, don't adjust your speakers. Although he is the captain of the Cyprus hockey team, that is not a Cypriot accent.
No, a bit more South London, isn't it? I've never actually lived in Cyprus, and I don't speak Greek or Turkish either. So don't expect an accent from me.
Can you give us a bit of a background to yourself? I mean, I believe that's a Turkish name as well.
It's a Turkish name. That's right. Yeah. My dad's from Northern Cyprus, but he moved here after he met my mum X number of years ago. I was born in London. Lived and grew up in London my whole life. Started playing hockey when I was probably 8 or 9, and fell in love with it. Carried on playing. Been playing my whole life. Yeah.
How did you get involved in the Cyprus hockey team?
So that came about when I was at uni. I was playing. I think that there was a guy there that was involved. Had gone to uni at Cardiff and was involved with Cyprus hockey at some point in his life, and sort of made the link that I played hockey. I was Cypriot, and then put me in touch with the association, and it sort of went from there. Which was really interesting. Suddenly being involved in an international setup was obviously incredibly exciting. I think it probably took a year or so to get a passport, and then once that was gone, I was away.
So how did you become the captain? I mean, had you captained teams beforehand?
Yeah, so I've captained sort of teams right through, from sort of junior hockey upwards. And I was actually captaining at Cardiff Uni at the time. I was captain men's twos, and so I've done it before. I sort of didn't expect really to have the honour of captaining Cyprus. It definitely wasn't on my radar when I first started playing, but I was humbled, honoured by the offer, and you just always want to do your best, right? Anyway, but particularly when you're given an offer like that. And for me, it's sort of a way of giving back a little bit to Cyprus hockey, because giving me great opportunities to go away, to go on tournaments, play in all these great competitions, and gain loads of experience. And so anything I can sort of do to give back and assist is something that I'll always enjoy doing.
How did you become a captain? What was the process?
It's not like a player-led decision or anything like that. It's came from leadership team, which would have been the coaches at the time, and I think the way we operate normally is sort of on a tournament by tournament basis. So that if you're in your that kind of cycle, preparing going into something, you sort of select your captain then. So it was in 2017, but yeah, it was before then. Took it on, and it's interesting because really that sort of captaincy title is a little bit of just a label. I think that anyway, especially in hockey, where the captain doesn't really do much on a pitch. It's sort of just sake of wearing an armband and being the point of contact for the umpire, and leading the team out at, before the start of the game. But really it's about what you do sort of off the pitch, within your squad, within the team, at training, that sort of role. And I think you don't really even need a label to do that. You can be doing that, as sort of whatever your perceived position is in the team, whether you think you're a senior leader or a junior, you can show those qualities from the start, really.
Now, back in the 70s, there was a bit of a political issue between the Turks and the Greeks in Cyprus.
There was, yeah.
Is that still ongoing? What's the
There's obviously a history there, and there's obviously there's a history you can't really ignore. But in my experience, and this is where I can't really speak because I've never lived in Cyprus and I've never really been there and been in amongst it. But it's never something I've ever felt. It's definitely never something I've ever felt while playing hockey or being involved in hockey. That's almost certainly never even been a consideration, which is I would say which is positive, but I also wouldn't even regard it as it's a non-issue, right? Something that is never really even crossed my mind, which shows how much of a non-issue it is, I think.
Wait, so you were saying that even with your father's Turkish heritage,
Yeah.
And that there being several Greeks in the team, there's not been any issues about your captaincy of that group.
No, not as far as I'm aware. I think it's a something in the past, and I'm sure there's people who rightfully or wrongfully or whatever still hold on to certain opinions and feelings about that, and everyone's entitled to the way their family or them feel. But sport, and it's a world and an environment unto itself. It's not and shouldn't ever be governed by external factors like that. And that's one of the great things across history that you've seen, is that sport transcends those sorts of hostilities. And yeah, even considering I'm of Turkish Cypriot origin and the majority of the team is Greek Cypriot, in fact, everyone else is Greek Cypriot. I've never encountered a single issue. I never expect to. It's just a non-issue, which I'm obviously very grateful for. But at the same time, it's so much of a non-issue that it doesn't even cross my mind.
What about integration in terms of coming from England, from London?
Yeah.
The second generation idea of being.
Yeah.
You also mentioned earlier on there's several players living and playing outside of Cyprus.
Yeah, that's right. So we've got players in the UK, we've got players in the Netherlands, we've got players in Cyprus, and some of those players have only played hockey in Cyprus. Some of those players have only ever played hockey in the UK, and there's very different styles, very different ambitions, very different, even down to the way that people play hockey, because of the quality of the pitches in Cyprus versus the water bases and slick pitches that you get in the UK, all of that stuff. And how do you integrate those two teams, or how do you integrate those groups of players within the team? It's difficult, but I think it's probably not that much different to sort of how do you integrate players of different generations within the team, right? Because they have the same sort of thing, where you've got younger and older people who are used to different stuff. I think for us, we've just been very fortunate that everyone's incredibly accepting and lovely and respectful of each other. I think that's massively helped us, because everyone's always seen someone coming in, and what I'm referring to there is normally a player from the UK who we've scouted or spotted or persuaded to play for us, and they come into the setup, and generally it's seen as a positive move, because any improvement to the team is a improvement of Cyprus hockey and of hockey played in Cyprus generally, and and it will further not just the team that year, but the association as well.
Have you had to break down any ideologies about outsider complexes or anything like this?
No, I don't think so. I think there's always a hesitancy at the start. There's always a I don't really know what to describe it as, but when you bring players together at the start, you would never expect everyone to gel instantly at 100%, and that's a given, whether or not everyone's from the same country or not, or played hockey in the same country or not. And it does take a bit of time to warm up. And back to the social leader thing again, that's where your social leaders kick in and make sure that integration is happening. Make sure that there isn't someone on the sidelines who isn't being involved, either because they don't feel comfortable talking to people that they've never spoken with before, or because they feel like they're not being invited in. That's your social leaders' time to step in, break barriers, get people involved. And you can do that in so many different ways. The most obvious way is to sort of force it in a nice way by, buddying up, or having lines discuss certain things in meetings. Having separate line meetings, for example. If you have separate line meetings away from the group, you force people who should be talking to each other to talk to each other in a comfortable environment where they're, in a group of 5 rather than in a group of 20.
So is this getting a defender to perhaps right fullback to tackle the left winger sort of thing?
Yeah. Or rather within your line, so all of the defenders together to talk to each other, which that encourages, where you might not have had that natural integration, that encourages a bit of integration. It also helps with a lot of things. It's from a tactical perspective, it's much better to have players sort of taking ownership and understanding and becoming independent thinkers. But also it does it eases the transition in. Whereas if you've got a big group of lads that come together, it's very difficult for shy characters or characters who aren't used to overstating themselves to integrate, where there's such a big group of people to talk to or to make an impression on. It's much easier if you slowly integrate them in and build up. Well, they let them build up their relationships within the team at smaller intervals, and then so you're not going to get away from the fact that eventually you have lots of people coming together who may or may not have spoken loads, or may not have known each other for long periods of time. But the smaller things that you can do to help that integration happen is important.